Hello, my name is Vincent, and this is Bunker 6. The year was 1994, the year the PlayStation 1 was released in Japan, the year the full version of Netscape became the first commercially successful web browser in the world. And talking of the world, this was the year the artist formerly known as Prince, rest in peace, released his only record to ever reach the number one in the UK with his sultry smash, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. Elsewhere, in between all these major cultural events, was a 9-year-old chap from the outskirts of South London walking the streets of a town called Croydon with his grandmother, looking for the next big little thing to distract him for the next 24 hours or so. That chap was me. The first hobby shop I was introduced to as a wee lad was called BT's, a marvellous wonder of everything Hornby Railway and Tamiya battleships. The shop was a classic modelling monument where inventory was stacked to the ceiling as far back as the stockroom, quietly minding its business on the very busy Croydon High Street. With its immense black and yellow sign, it still lives vividly in my mind to this day. It was an Aladdin's cave of varied models capturing bygone historical moments in grey plastic ephemera, encased in colourful cardboard boxes, adorned with perfect watercolour renditions to give life and context to the cunningly complex models inside. Yet, all I really saw was my future in these miniature works of art. But I had a problem though. I grew up in a household that really didn't approve of me playing with tanks and soldiers or anything violent really, so that left me in a bit of a bind. Thankfully, one fateful afternoon, while cruising the aisles, or what felt like at the time, chasms of the BT store, my 9-year-old brain had a light bulb moment, which I then proceeded to convince my grandmother's purse to invest in. I may have been one of those unfortunate boys who wasn't allowed to play with toy weapons, but no one mentioned anything about extraterrestrial lasers, or otherworldly things that could disappear you while on an afternoon stroll, say, through the Nevada desert. This is the moment I discovered the Tester's Area 51 UFO model kit. I was astonished by its beauty and simplicity. What can now be best described as two elegant salad bowls stuck together, to my 9-year-old eyes it was a magnificent sight to behold. So I convinced my nan to buy it for me. Invest in my hobby career. Once we got home late that evening, I learned I had no idea how to effectively build a model, let alone airbrush the hull of an alien ship to a mirror finish. The model was ruined very quickly, but my desire and interest for all things otherworldly and clipped from a sprue had just begun. And even though I loved what my first hobby shop had to offer, I knew I was way out of my depth, and I would soon tire of BT's during the summer of '94. The barrier of entry felt way too high, and without any adult supervision or guidance, I felt completely at a loss to get any sort of results I'd be proud of. But I was soon to have these humps in the road flattened by the hobby gods of South London. Further up the high street there was, and still is, a department store, a quintessential 90s masterpiece of architecture that was a plastic fantastic church to retail therapy. It would not have looked out of place if it was the backdrop for, say, a TV show like Crystal Maze. Nan and I would wander through this retail space and out the back of it to save ourselves from walking all the way up to North End Street and around it in order to reach the more historical shops that were literally right behind the giant monstrosity that was Debenhams at the time. Aside from mom-and-pop retail that seemed to feel relegated to the back streets of Croydon, there was Surrey Street Market, a bustling place where a pound of mushy and other Londoner essentials were being peddled by the quick-tongued stall owners with the gusto and panache that would have felt not out of place at a pantomime. But on one of these trips, something different happened. As we turned out onto the streets from behind Debenhams, we walked past something that I had not noticed before and has been imprinted into my life forever since. At first, I didn't really pay attention as I walked past the red frame windows, so I wasn't fully aware of what I'd just seen. But Nan and I turned back, and there they were, in all their colourful glory. Helmet-clad elfin warriors riding dragons, and giants in ragged clothing, beautifully painted and protected behind glass cabinets. It felt almost spiritual. I had never been so close to such amazing craftsmanship in all my life. There was what felt like hundreds of models behind these shop windows. I stopped dead in my tracks, and as Nan clenched her purse tightly, we doubled back to enter the Games Workshop of Croydon for the very first time. I realised my mouth was agape as I took in the spectacle of impossibly tall walking cathedrals on billboards, gaming tables with post-apocalyptic ruins, and of course the beautifully painted models and some not so beautifully painted models around the place. It's fair to say I was in love. It was everything I never knew I wanted. It was otherworldly. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It felt like I discovered a long-forgotten tomb of great significance that I hoped no one else would ever find. So we walked out of my first Games Workshop experience with a metal Space Marine Dreadnought, Chaos Black spray paint for the undercoat, and the model was amazing. It weighed a ton, but it was awesome. An absolute nightmare to glue together. I think I glued my fingers together more than I glued the model. But it was a marked improvement on my earlier underwhelming UFO model experience from BTs. I decided to follow up with a metal Space Orc Dreadnought and finally an Imperator Titan. I love the big models of 40k, but I would discover Epic. This would be it. I finally found the ultimate hobby. It combined my newfound love for science fiction, being creative, and most importantly, my previous obsession as a younger child, which was Micro Machines, and Mighty Max, and dare I say even Polly Pocket. I just loved the scale and cuteness of all things tiny, and Epic slotted in with these previous preferences and fulfilled these newer passions I was discovering through Games Workshop's offerings of lore. Aside from the hobby aspect, there was of course the gaming too. Sadly, I was too young to stay out in Croydon at the time the game nights were being held, and I never got to go and play a game of Epic. Furthermore, this was about the time I would see myself heading to boarding school for 8 years, and having a hobby like Warhammer was a one-way ticket to becoming a social outcast, and I didn't need any help at the time of achieving this goal. So, as often happens, I put down the paints and the brushes and fell into secondary education from 11 to 18, where I of course developed other interests from music production to BMXing. Fast forward to 2017 and I had an itch, a Games Workshop itch you might say. I know I kept my Epic 40k battle book somewhere, for some reason, and even brought it to America with me despite having never been involved in the hobby for the last 20 years. I kept the book because, for some reason, I had an adoration for the little models still, never really wanting them to go away. I pulled the book out from one of my old flight cases and it all came flooding back. This would be it. The feelings of joy took me straight back to that smelly Games Workshop with my nan, and I was not going to pass up on it this time. I did a quick Google and lo and behold there was a Games Workshop about 8 minutes away from me where I lived in California at the time. I got there as fast as I could, only to be told that Epic had been discontinued. No surprise really, but I didn't mind at the time as I was just happy to be in a store again. It felt good, less smelly. All the new stuff was a bit overwhelming, but my emotions and nostalgia were in complete control. I walked out of the Glendale GW with more towel than ever made sense, but I thought they would be fun to paint because they were white, only to discover that painting white was, well, not very easy actually. I blasted through a bunch of towel unforgivingly and sold at the moment I realised I didn't want to learn 9th edition. I just wanted my Epic models again. So I set up a multitude of eBay alerts, and after many a one auction, I'm here with more Epic than I could ever have dreamed of. 9-year-old me would be very proud. It has turned into an obsession, but I want to share this with those who felt like me. People who liked 40k, but for some reason Epic 40k was just a little bit cooler. I now have a vast array of things that would pique the interest of anyone who likes the vintage 6mm goodness of Epic, and I intend on sharing that obsession with whoever wants to see it. So what do I plan on doing with this channel of Bunker 6? Well, carry on where I left off. I have painted some of my models, but I would say 98% are needing assembly and painting. I am by no means a great painter, but I'll attempt to match the standard that GW set in their publications like White Dwarf and the rulebooks, and even the Epic 40k magazine, which I have all issues of. Where possible, I will try to recreate a classic model straight from the pages of a GW publication. Additionally, I will explore other specialist games such as Battlefleet Gothic, and yes, I own an unpainted Forge World Ramillies 4, Aeronautica Imperialis 1st and 2nd editions, why not, and even the awesome Adeptus Titanicus, because I love big walking cathedrals. If I can, I will also supply painting and terrain tutorials if I ever feel like I get good enough to do that. Initially, I'm going to try and release a new video every 2 weeks for now, but I hope to improve the release schedule once I get quicker at editing. This is a new channel after all, and the whole process is quite new for me, so we'll just have to see how things will go. But if you made it this far through the video, it's really appreciated, and maybe drop a like or subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the nostalgia, and ring the bell to be notified of more specialist gaming content to come from Bunker 6. If you have your own epic stories, I'd love to read them in the comments below too. But for now, this is Vincent signing off for Bunker 6.